So the A7S III is still one of the best cameras out there for content creation. So you've got yours, you're ready to shoot some video. Well, in today's video, I'm going to go through my settings, or should I say cinematic settings for the A7S III, how I have the camera set up for run and gun videography situations there. So let's get into it. Just to let you guys know, in the interest of time, I'm going to try and go through this as fast as possible. However, if you feel like I'm going too fast, timestamps will be down below so that you could go back and rewatch whatever it is that you may have missed there, as well as I'll have notes down in the comments there as well. So the first thing we're going to do when we're setting up the camera here is we're going to put it into movie mode, because everything that we're doing is affecting our video settings there. Once we have it set to movie mode there, the first thing we want to do here is come to image quality, file format, and I use XAVC HS 4K. The ACE is the most compressed format that you could use there, but that can be hard on your computer. If you do have a little bit older computer, then I'd recommend either doing S, or if you really have an older computer or you edit in Premiere Pro or something like that, then the SI format is going to be the full uncompressed version there, and you could edit a lot easier on your camera there. But for me, 4K HS. And next we need to set our frame rate here. In the movie settings here, I am selecting 24 frames per second, aka 24p. 24p is going to be my main frame rate. If we're talking things that are cinematic, most movies are shot at 24 or 25 frames per second there. So 24p is my frame rate there. People at 30, do your thing there. I do utilize higher frame rates there, 60 and 120 frames per second a lot as well. We're going to talk about that later in the video. And then for your record setting there, you want to select the highest amount that you can there. Whatever you select for your file format would dictate some of your record settings. I have mine set to 100 megabits 42.0 there. Again, this is going to save me a little bit more space and my computer can handle it. If it can't, then in this situation here, you'd want to select 422 because you'd get a less compressed format there. Next up is going to be your SNQ mode there. I don't really utilize the SNQ mode here on the camera, except for in situations there when I'm not recording any audio and I need the highest bit rate out of the camera for 120 frames per second. I tend to use 120 frames per second that is just built into the camera. But in the times that I do use it here, you can see I have it set to 120 frames per second. The playback frame rate there is 120 frames per second as well. And then I have the record setting set to the highest there, again in 422 10-bit there, because again, sometimes I just want a little bit more quality out of those files. Next, we're going to come down to our media here. This is where you can format your cards there. Depending on the situation here, this is where you want to set up how to use the dual card slots there. You can have it set to standard there, where it just uses one memory card or the other. But to be honest with you there, if I'm shooting anything that is important, i.e. client work or something that I really don't want to lose there, I have it set up for dual recording, which is going to be the simultaneous here, both for photo and video. All right, next up we have file here and file settings there. I keep this pretty standard. However, if you do need to make things easier to find in your software there or in your file management, you can give custom names to your files in these settings here. I just use the default because that's what I was used to before when I shot Sony. But I do utilize this on client shoots there when it is that I want to go and give it a custom name for the file format so stuff is easier to find. All right, shooting mode. You want to come to exposure mode there, and you want to make sure that you don't have the camera set to auto. You want to have it set to manual exposure there, because we want to have control over all our settings, i.e. our aperture, our shutter speed, and our frame rate, all that there. We don't want the camera dictating to us what it is that we want to do there. Next thing here, we're going to go to audio recording. Obviously, we're going to have that set to on. Audio recording, I normally have that set to somewhere between 7 and 10 when it is that I have a microphone connected. Bump that up if you want to use the internal audio. Usually that's just for scratch audio though, because the internal microphones aren't that great. Wind noise reduction I have set to off just because I'd rather do this in post. Audio level display, we have that set to on because I do want to see the screen, making sure it's in the optimal range. All right, next up we're going to talk image stabilization there. I have that set to standard most of the time there, But then if it is that I'm not using a gimbal and I do need to do a more advanced shot there, you can set it to active. It does give you a small crop. I have this set to my function button menu there so that I can change it in the situations when I'm just going handheld, but I do want some more stable footage than just a handheld look there. All right, zoom settings here. If you're going to zoom and you come into clear image zoom, this is one of the most useful features on a Sony camera here. Essentially what it will do, it will give you 1 point times reach out of any lens there. So any lens that you put on a Sony camera can go a little bit further. Next, we're coming into our shooting display. These are going to be the things that show up on the display when it is that you're shooting here. Good line is going to be on there. Type I have it to is set to rule out thirds there. And then I'm gonna have emphasize display when recording. This gives you the big red sign there on the camera to let you know that it is recording. All right, exposure for your ISO, I have a custom button set for that. So metering mode I have set to multi. Face priority I do have off as well. I'll show you why here in a little bit when I show you the zebras there. White balance there is also something that I normally have set to custom, and I do have that set up on a custom button there as well. In the color tone area here, picture profile, on this camera I am always shooting in PP8. I find that to be the best color profile there, especially on this camera now that it is 10-bit. You could color grade it really well and shoot in S-Log3 there. Link to my S-Log3 color grading video up here as well. Now we come to the zero displays there. I definitely have them on, and I have a couple of different settings here. So usually if I'm just out and about running and gunning, I have it set to 95 there. That is the highest I want the highlights to ever be in an image. If they're getting higher than 95, they are really blowing out there. And then I have two custom ranges here for C1 and C2 here. C1 is going to be my skin tones there. So I have this set to 48, which is a little bit lower than some people might tell you, but I think it looks better for darker skin tones if it's closer to 45 there. If I have zebras on the skin or on a gray card there, that means that the exposure is set correct for the skin tones. And then if I really want to dial in the image, my C2 is set to 75, and that's really where I want my highlights to hit in a control situation like this. I want them set to 75 or lower. All right, autofocus mode, we want to have that set continuous autofocus there. AF transition speed is something to play around with. If you want smoother focus pose there and you're using autofocus to do that, you could set it to be a little bit slower. If you need it to respond as fast as possible, you could turn it up there. That's something to play around with. The sensitivity though, I do have set all the way up because I usually want that to be locked on to face and eye tracking. Focus area I usually have set to zone when I'm just running and gunning, and I can use the joystick to kind of move that area there around. Face and eye priority is going to be on. I have it set to human. If you're shooting animals, you want to change it to animals there. Right, left is auto, it doesn't matter. I do want the face and eye display on whenever it is that I'm shooting, so I can make sure it's locked on to what it's supposed to be locked on to. And then register faces priority is also going to be on there as well. Focus assist, I do use a magnifier in manual focus mode because I prefer that, so I can zoom in, make sure what I want to be in focus is in focus. I prefer that to focus peaking. Focus peaking just never sits too well for me, so I prefer to use the magnifier when I'm in manual focus mode. All right, so a couple other cinematic settings here that we want to set up here. We want to come down here and go to our touch operation. I have that set to on. I have the sensitivity set to standard. And then I want to set my touch functions in shooting. I have that set to touch tracking. You can have it to set to touch to focus if you do want to press on the screen so it can focus there. However, I find the touch to tracking to be a bit better, particularly on the A7S3, because the tracking is so good that it can track a moving subject. In my finder select, I have that set to auto there. Sometimes I do turn that off and have it set to manual, because sometimes if you have a microphone or if you're waving your hand over the camera, it can cause the screen to go blank, and that can be a little bit annoying. Monitor brightness I have set to sunny weather. That way it's giving me the brightest there and I could see it when I'm outside. And then the other thing that I have customized in here, as I mentioned before, is going to be my gamma display assist. I currently have it set to on, and then I have that set from S-Log3 to Rec 709 there, as I mentioned. This is going to allow you to see somewhat what the colors look like in your screen there, so it's not just a flat washed out image that you're getting from S-Log3. It's going to show you what it kind of looks like in a Rec 709 behind the image. And then power setting there, I have mine set right now to 1 minute because I'm in a controlled environment and I have batteries all around me. When I'm out running and gunning, shooting something like a travel video or an event video there, I do have this set to the lowest possible setting there, which is 10 seconds there, just to save some more battery life. And then auto power temperature off there, just go ahead and set that to high. Even though I've never had any overheating issues with the Sony A7S III. On all your Sony cameras there, you just want to go ahead and set it to high so that you have the best option there. Now that we have everything set up there, we want to come back here to operation, customize, and come to custom key setting there. So if we come in here, the first button is not set. As I mentioned, button number 2, which is usually the AEL button, I have that set to turn my gamma display assist on and off. Sometimes if I do need to grab a quick photo on this camera, I do need to change my picture profile, so I want to turn off gamma display assist so the pictures don't look too weird on the screen. Next up here is going to be the AF button right here. Not all of my cameras have this on and off focus here for autofocus to manual focus there. So if I do need to manual focus real quick there, I can just press this button and go. Button number 4 is going to be the C1 button here. That is my white balance. As I mentioned before, I think white balance is the second most important thing for your cinematic images there, to make sure you dial in your colors. Link to a video that I did up here on how to set your custom white balance on your Sony cameras. And then next button here is going to be my C3 button over here. Exposure is so important there. I have that set here. And then sometimes I do want to turn off the touch tracking to make sure I'm not bumping it on the screen. So I could turn that on and off there. That's my button number 6. And then if you come over here on the back of the camera here, the touchpad, I have the left side of the touchpad set to picture profile here. And then, as I mentioned when we're talking about the exposure settings, I changed my ISO settings using this here. And then on the top here, I still have my record button set to the record button there for movie shootings. You can customize that button if you have something else that you want to put there. And then for my C2, I have set to zoom there. So you can come in here while it is that you're shooting and you could zoom in, and again, that gives you the extra range without any quality loss there. So yo, that was a lot. Thank you for rocking with me here. Hopefully you learned something. If there's something that you do a little bit different, let me know down in the comments there. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. The subscribe button and the notification button. Video will be right here, or whatever the latest video is I think relates to you. Or hit the subscribe button like I said, and I'll catch you in the next one. Big up yourself. Peace.